FloodGate family. Thank you for joining us for another Leadership Live. And I am absolutely ecstatic to have Sarah Sachinis, the Chief Commercial Officer with Trice Medical, has been making some incredible impacts, here to talk about one of my personal favorite subjects, leadership, and in this unique space of med device. So, Sarah, thanks so much for spending time joining us here. Love to have you. But most people, I got to know you, and I've known you for years, but most people aren't as lucky. So tell me a little bit about Sarah. Tell me a little bit about Trice.
Well, firstly, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on. So a little bit about me and Trice. So I'm from the UK originally, not South Africa or Australia, as I often get. So I started my career starting off in pharmaceuticals over in the UK. I then moved into med devices in sales and marketing, working for orthopedic sports medicine company, Smith & Nephew. So after around 10 years in the corporate world, decided to I wanted to get into the startup world and scratch that entrepreneurial itch. So started up my own company, effectively consulting and distribution, bringing innovative, disruptive technology into UK and Europe. Long story short, Trice Medical was one of those companies, and it was the most exciting technology I was working on at the time. It's rare in this particular space to have something as disruptive and new and innovative as the products that we have at Trice. So I had an opportunity to become a bigger part of Trice. So 5 years ago, moved my family to America to effectively run the commercial team. So starting off running marketing, then sales and marketing.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah. So you've really grown up in med device, did the entrepreneurship in med device, and now leading teams, building teams, and for big companies, doesn't get bigger than Smith & Nephew, and in the startup world. So I'm curious, as you think through, what do you think makes a good leader? Maybe ones you've seen or ones you've been led by in this, world of med device.
Sure. So, I mean, number one, medical device industry is tough. It's a hard industry. It's a complex technical sell. On top of that, you're also supporting your customers and helping teach them how to use these complex products. So it's a lot of pressure. So the number one thing that I believe you have to do as a leader is you have to understand that. You have to walk a mile in someone's shoes. So you have to get out there. If you haven't already done it yourself and started from the beginning of carrying a bag in sales, get out there, spend time in the field, understand the challenges, like truly understand what the team have to face every single day. And then you're in a better position to support, to empathize, and really have that mentality of, I'm here to help you. We are all in this together, and have their backs. And you have their back, your team will have your back. And I think that is absolutely key.
No, that's a great point. I mean, being able to truly understand, this is a complex market, right? It operates very differently than some other businesses. And so getting out there, living it, understanding, whether you didn't grow up with it, get out there so you can be part of the team and realize and really support them where they need to be. And people that are understood, right? They'll work for you. So I think those are some great suggestions. I love that.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm sure your career trajectory was not, no mistakes, right? You ever made, it was always perfect. Always. I'm kidding. No, none of us ever had that, right? So I'm curious of a couple lessons you've learned along the way that you'd like to be able to share, so other people might not have to learn those lessons the hard way themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where to start? I'd say, going back to, what I was saying before, like walk a mile in someone's shoes. That's not just do it with your own team and support your own team. What I learned and didn't learn early enough is for a company to fully function and perform, you have to have strong cross-functional working. And what I didn't appreciate fully early on when I got those initial promotions is you get very focused on your own team, of how can I support my own team and perform within my own team. And I neglected the people in other teams across the business. And what I wish I had done earlier on is invested as much time in other departments and other people and really got to know them, understand their challenges and empathize with them. And, to really understand how, as a department, we can help each other. And on the back of that, certainly later in my career, I have now done more of this, and it's far more synergistic. And not only does it then open up more of an environment where I can understand what they're going through and support them, it's reciprocal, and it makes such a big difference to the runnings of a business.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great great concept to think about. Is like you have your team, but that team lives within a larger system of multiple teams,
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I know it's a classic thing of that first regional manager, right, that gets promoted up the sales team. There's back orders, their reactions. I'm going to protect the team, and goes rally against operations and,
Oh, yeah.
Beating on their high chair, right? Without taking time to understand the true scenario. How can they be part of the solve, right? Creating, those bridges instead of burning them up, right? So
yeah, and you get less frustrated if you understand. There's a back order. Okay, understand the reasons behind that. Understand the people that are there behind the scenes trying to make it happen and bring the product. And you do that, you become less frustrated naturally, because you're understanding what the barriers are and why. Or if a new product has been delayed in the launch, understand why. Speak to the R&D team, really get a feel for what it was, rather than just getting frustrated that it hasn't happened.
Right. Yeah. And anyone that's been knee deep in the complexity of a supply chain and production, I'm always amazed we get anything, because it's impressive. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, another big lesson, and I'm sure you can appreciate this one, Joe, is I think, again, the early promotions, when I started building out a team and recruiting, one thing that I learned not to do is get recruitment fatigue. So again, I'm sure you can appreciate this, that you've been recruiting for a while, you're looking for that right person, and it hasn't happened yet. So you start to get recruitment fatigue, and then you perhaps recruit someone that didn't necessarily fit that right portfolio or the profile that you were looking for. And that's something that, again, learn to avoid, be patient, wait for that person. Don't get that recruitment fatigue.
Right. Well, and I think it's a great point. One of the other things that occurs many times, if you don't have that right recruitment, again, this is near and dear to my heart, but I know I made this mistake myself, is you go get the right pool together and you get a lot of below average.
Oh, yeah.
You get one person that's good, they look awesome because it's comparative game, right? So it's really, part of it is making sure you're getting a group of great, so that excellent really stands out, and without that up front, you end up making some of those bad hires, which are costly, Yeah,
and they are extremely, extremely costly. And that's something I've definitely learned over the years. And now, we have a really great team right now with really strong A players, and it takes time to get there, and you've got to be patient and stick to that right profile.
Well, you kind of segued into this. So I'm jumping into this question for us a little bit. Is so how, don't get the fatigue, right? Don't hit the easy button and fine, I got to fill this. Let's go. Right. Heard that. But so how do you find and how do you evaluate new talent now that you have this A team? How'd you get there?
So the first thing is, for every role that I'm recruiting for, have a very clearly defined profile of that person. So profile of, key attributes, ideal background, and really ensure that the recruiter that you're working with understands that really truly understands that profile, because otherwise you're wasting each other's time. So not just define that profile, but be very, very strict around that criteria. Be like, no, we know that this is what works and this is why. Therefore, we need a candidate that fits within this. And yes, maybe it's going to take us more time, but we know that works. And that's actually more relevant, well, certainly very relevant at Trice. We have very disruptive technology. We're creating new markets. That is a different type of candidate than someone who's coming into a business where there's a lot of existing revenue and they're building off that revenue and it's an existing market. We have a very different type of business, and we need people that can come in and, it's a very different profile. Someone who won't give up, who's tenacious, who is creative, finds ways to win. Like, this is a very different profile. And it's one we actually created. So we actually took a couple of years ago, took our top talent, our top sales talent, and we did a personality profile to see, okay, what is it that makes them so great? And we've tried to replicate that. So we've taken that profile, and when we work with recruiters, we say, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is what we need to see.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what I love is you got on the profile what experiential, right? This is where they need to come, what they've done. But you also then analyzed your best of your best to determine, okay, what attitudinal features make them great, right? And then you can identify that because, some people might have had the right experience, but, they woke up on third base and thought they had a triple. And it really wasn't, they don't have the core attitude to be successful. So I think that combination of the two is crucial.
Yeah. And that's hard to teach. It's hard to teach those kind of skills. Like they either have it or they don't. And yes, you can absolutely develop people and build off of that, but they have to have that initial, that certainly for us, and obviously a lot of sales roles is that determination, that get out, don't give up mentality.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think the other thing you mentioned too is understanding the company you're with, right? Not every company needs the same culture. Yeah. And what worked at Smith and Nephew isn't going to work at a small Trice necessarily from an attitude. The right experience might be the same, right? But the attitude might not, that you need might not align. So just understanding that just because of the same market, same products, it might not be the same attitude that fits that company at that time.
Absolutely. And that's also very important to define, like what is your culture? And we did that at Trice. We came up with our core values. So we have 5 very clear core values that ultimately defines the type of culture we're trying to build. And we want people that fit within those core values. Yeah. So when I'm recruiting, I actually have a list of competency-based interview questions against each core competency that I ask, and then I rate against those core competencies. And if someone doesn't score highly against some of them, then they're probably not a great fit for our culture. And that's okay. It's just not for our company.
Yeah. I think it's very, very, very wise. I like the way you tie that back. I heard something interesting the other day I think you'd appreciate is core values plus actions creates habits. Habits create culture.
Absolutely. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. So speaking about cultures and driving and finding those right people, how do you continue once you got them on board? How are you developing those high performers, those A players? What do you find works?
So number one, if they're a high performer and an A player, then it's the most rewarding experience to develop them. It's the favorite part of my job is developing people that have that potential and the potential to become this high performer for that next role. And also someone who is, humble enough to realize that, okay, they're not there yet, that they need to develop. So the number one thing is, to develop high performers, you have to have an open and honest relationship, that you have to have that level of trust. And in that level of trust, it's being able to, the person then will feel more comfortable asking for feedback, and also I'll feel more comfortable giving feedback. So you have to have that, if you don't create an environment where it's comfortable for someone to actually give you feedback as well as delivering it, then that's a huge barrier for someone to being developed, because it's very difficult for someone to develop if they're not open and receptive to that, and if I'm not in a position where I can deliver that. So that is the number one key thing in my mind, is that creating that foundation.
Yeah.
And then really understanding them. So, asking them, hey, what drives you? What motivates you? What are your ambitions? And creating a plan together to help them get there. And ask them to do a self-assessment. Like, not just where do they want to go in their career, but how do they want to develop as a person, as a professional? So, asking them to do a self-evaluation, like what do you feel your weaknesses or your areas of development, as well as your strengths, and then create a plan together, a development plan of how you're going to overcome some of those areas of development, working with them, supporting them to get there, and then having regular checkpoints and reviews to monitor their progress against that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I like you understanding their goals, where they want to be, I think develops that trust, right? And so that trust quotient, and then, they've got to have some humility to you of like, here's where I need to go. And then having a plan of like, okay, what's our steps? Because nothing great happens overnight. And so I love that thinking, it's just understand them, have that humility factor, and then set the plan and keep that wheel going to success. I think that's easily replicatable, I hope, for some people listening to this. So
Yes.
That's a great suggestion. Now, there's a lot of people that are those high performers, right? They want to be tapped for leadership. They want to have their first opportunity here that are listening. What would you recommend? What would you say to them?
A few things. Number one, it's that classic old, do the job before you get the job. But I'm not just talking about, do the job as in the next job in terms of taking on additional projects. It's do the job as in be the person that you need to be for that next role. So for instance, you're a sales director, you want to become a VP of sales. There's a problem, there's an issue that you need to deal with. Think, okay, if I was a VP, how would I deal with this? As opposed to, okay, I have this problem, I'm going to go complain to my manager and, ask them to go figure it out. It's, okay, you have an issue and say you need help of, other departments to resolve this issue, go to them, act like a leader, go try and figure it out and, figure out the solutions to the problem. And then, if that fails, then at that point, go to your manager and ask for support. But it's, okay, just having that mindset of, okay, if I was a VP, how would I approach this?
Yeah. Be the job you want, and take the actions, because Then it's easy when they're like, hey, who should we get to do this? Well, who's kind of already doing it anyway? That's, we'll tap them.
Exactly.
Really.
Exactly. And another big thing as well is, always be open to learning and try every opportunity there is. Learn, be a sponge. Ask for learning opportunities. Go, if there's any gaps that you feel you have, go figure it out. Go ask somebody to help you. Just use every opportunity that you have throughout any time in your career to just learn. Never get to a point where you feel like you know everything, because nobody ever does. And part of that is just making sure that, when you're trying to learn, a big part of that, I mentioned earlier, is asking for feedback and getting it. Don't just ask for it just because you're ticking a box. Yeah, I asked for feedback. It's really listen, really hear the feedback and work on that and create, like I said, create this environment where people feel comfortable to give you feedback.
Right. Yeah. And if you don't understand it, say, can you give me an example where you saw that? Get the texture so you really understand it.
Exactly. And then it's one of these, if someone creates an environment where you don't feel comfortable as a leader giving them feedback, then you kind of stop. It's difficult to then keep giving someone feedback if they're shutting it down every time. So and it's a tough thing to do, especially if it's bad feedback. And earlier on in my career, especially, I was I said earlier, this was one of my lessons, is just even if it hurts the feedback, say, hey, I appreciate that. I want to learn. I want to keep getting better. Please keep giving me that feedback. I know it's tough to hear, but I want to hear because I want to get better and I want to learn. So just keep asking for it and try and take it as well as you can to get better.
That's great. Now, everyone listening, I have been asking a lot of great questions, Sarah, but I'm sure you have some multiple questions. All you have to do is comment below. You comment below. After my next question, I'll be taking some of those questions from the audience here. So I know Sarah's ready to kind of impart some of this great wisdom and different specifics there, or about Trice, or any questions you have. So please make sure you comment below, and we'll take some of those here in a moment. But I want to ask you one last final question from us. The fun one, is, who is your favorite superhero? I got to do my superhero stand, and why?
I have a 6-year-old who is obsessed with superheroes, so I'm sure he'd have fun
answers for you,
So my favorite superhero, I would say it's probably Storm, and it's not necessarily in topic with leadership, but she can control the weather, and I am a very, very avid skier. And to have the ability to just create a ton of snow would be amazing.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to create some nice hot weather, I'd have the ability to do that. So she would be my favorite.
I like that. And Storm, I'm going skiing on Thanksgiving, and it could be dodgy amount of snow. So I would love the Storm capability there to be able to make sure that there's some nice, fresh, tasty powder on the first day of skiing there in Thanksgiving time. So, guys, we're going to take some questions. So please put some comments in the text box below. We'll be pulling some of those up. Karen was excited to hear from you today. And have a note, Sarah. how do you motivate team employees despite conflicts and obstacles?
It's a great question. Motivation is absolutely key to the performance of anybody. If you're, we've all been there. If you don't feel motivated, or you have a blip where, you have a day where you don't feel motivated, the level of effort is not as high as someone who is, feels good about a company, about the products and what they're doing. So the number one thing, and I always try and have this at my front of my mind, is people have to feel motivated. So how do you motivate people? That's number one. They have to believe in the company they're working for. They've got to believe in the direction of the company. And as a leader, I have to communicate that to them and communicate it in a way where, it's real and it's genuine, and I believe in it and they believe in it. They also need to believe in our products. And fortunately, we're, at a company where we've had fantastic products that are genuinely making a difference to patients' lives, and that again is hugely motivated. But number one, in terms of what's more in my control, is rewarding high performance. Like, that motivates people, is recognizing it and rewarding it. There's nothing worse than someone being out there working hard every single day and that performance not being recognized. Like, that is motivating. Yeah. And and hopefully I hope my team feel this, that I will go to bat for them, that I will, if they work hard for me, I will do everything I can to get them everything they want and make sure they are rewarded. And that, again, is motivating. Whenever I work with someone who does that for me, knowing that I work hard is going to get rewarded, that is what you want from a leader.
That is awesome. Yeah, no, I think you said a lot of key things there. You talked about having the vision, having belief, know they're supported, recognizing excellence, right? A lot of those things. And I think what's interesting, there is no single solution here, right? It's multiple things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we got a question here from Daniel. And guys, if you have additional questions, please comment in the text box below. We'll pull those in. I have a question from Daniel. As a veteran, we're natural leaders. When trying to transition to med device, what is your recommendation for starting out from the bottom? Great question, Daniel.
It's a great question. And I say that starting from the bottom up, you're someone who, assuming you're a veteran, you're a natural leader, you're aspiring to be a leader, you're probably going to get there one day, is just, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, learn. Just get out and learn as much as possible. Every opportunity that presents itself to you, just learn. Ask so many questions to anyone that you work with, anyone across the business. Just try and it's the quicker you can get that knowledge, the quicker you're going to get there. And then on top of that is just perform in your current role. Don't forget the importance of everyone. It's easy to get hung up on the next role and how do I get there. It's perform in your current role, then everything else will happen. But you have to perform in your current role and just focus on that. And again, you've got those natural leadership qualities, the rest will follow.
Yeah. No, I think you very good point is, let's say they want to transition med device, but make sure if you're selling a B2B now, nail it, right? Be successful. And Daniel, as a veteran, I agree with you. We've got some programs. One of our key talent advisors is a veteran as well, and kind of leads some of that transition. So please ping us afterwards. We've got a lot of material for veterans to be able to understand the best way to navigate into that first role in medical device. And you're right, you will have to start, carrying the bag, supporting a case, learning, as Sarah said, looking for places to learn, to be willing to be the sponge and nail it where you are, and then progress from there. Guys, again, if you have any additional questions, please post them below. I'm going to take one. Ashley, what do you look for in new talent to bring on board at Trice? You mentioned you kind of had that profile, so I guess you're going to ask them what that is.
Yeah, so the profile that we look for is number one, someone who is incredibly tenacious, that you don't give up. It's any company where you're building new markets and bringing disruptive technology is tough. You're going to get punched in the face. You've got to be so resilient and tenacious to not give up. Mm-hmm. And one of our core values is a positive and enthusiastic attitude. And again, that's hard when things get tough, but again, you've got to have that. So, in answer to that question, it's someone who's tenacious, incredibly motivated, extremely accountable, and that just doesn't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And obviously incredibly resilient. So those are the core kind of competencies we look for.
Yeah. I think of Angela Duckworth's classic book Grit when you say that a little bit. That's what I think of. So here's Karen, who said hi earlier, was asking, who's been a source of inspiration for you in your career? I love that one.
So I actually, so the biggest inspiration I've had in my career as a person in this industry is the person who ultimately brought me to this country and to work for Trice. So Mark Foster, our previous CEO of Trice. So he's been very much my mentor over the last 5 years. He was a very senior sales leader at Smith & Nephew. So to have the opportunity to work directly for him at that point in my career, where I was relatively early on in my career, he taught me a huge amount. A very, very good people manager. So he's someone that again, having that, what I mentioned before, being a sponge, I was trying to learn off him and see how he led people, and people will generally follow him too. They'll follow him anywhere. Like he has that, he looks after his people. And I think that's what really taught me, like he has his people's back. And to me, I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned from him is he looks out for them. He also recognizes talent and rewards people for performing. And that's really kind of what drives how I try and manage my people as well.
I heard a lot in what you learned from your previous responses. So it's something amazing, and why we do these, because one of the best way to learn how to be a great leader is listening and learning from other great leaders, and having the ability to pass that down. And for that reason, Sarah, I really thank you for being on this today, because you being able to impart that. I'm sure someone's listening to it here live, or catches the stream later, or watches, going to take maybe an arrow from one of those arrows, put it in their quiver, so they can be a better leader to inspire that next generation of leaders. So thank you for taking the time. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for everyone for joining us today on this edition of Leadership Live. Thank you.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.